All right, welcome back to the Soul Fresh Podcast. I'm your host, BK.
And I'm your host, J. Steve.
J. Steve, what it do?
Nothing much, brother. We back with another one. Doubling up, or as they say, doubling down.
Yeah, so
getting this thing ready for everybody for the 2022.
Yeah, so what's been going on for your 2022? How's it started out? Oh, yeah, as you can see, we're starting out, we're doing the whole video thing now. So, bear with us if we kind of, have a couple of skips and the bumps. But how's your 22 starting out?
Yeah, it started out decently. We made it to another year. Fortunately, me and you still alive and a lot of other people. But unfortunately, a lot of people passed away at the beginning of the year. Recently lost my cousin last week, which was a tragedy. Mm-hmm. Dealing with that, a lot of anxiety, a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah.
This week, a lot of not eating. But I have to carry on. We have to move forward. He would not want me to slow down and stop making progress. So here we are in 2022 trying to progress further on this podcast and make it better for the people.
Yeah. Speaking of anxiety, you know what's triggering my anxiety?
Today?
In general.
Oh, COVID.
No, well, that too, because Rona's not going nowhere.
No,
apparently.
It's not going nowhere.
3 years going on and, we're still here.
New strains coming.
Mainly, I'm going to go ahead and say it, mainly because people don't want to do what they got to do. They don't want to wear the mask. They want,
go get vaccinated.
That too. But it's mainly just wear the mask, and stop coming out the house. That's my gripe. Stop coming out the house if you just had COVID like 2 days ago.
Right.
Don't come around me after 5 days. Don't come around me after 10 days. I got 2 months.
Right.
I'm going to give you 2-3 months. But most of all, like I said on social media the other day, if you just had COVID, like
you have
3
to meet
days
my
ago,
personal requirements.
3 days ago, don't come talking about, doctor said I'd be good in a couple of days. I come through there and drop that off. Like, no. Don't come over my house.
At least 21 days minimum.
No, but what's really triggering my anxiety is that the fact that we're still going through this voter rights.
Yeah, voter rights problem, voter suppression. Mm-hmm.
So we got somebody on here to come talk about voter rights bill, VRA, 1965. We're going to kind of do a little bit of history lesson, and we're going to let her break it down because she is the one with the knowledge. So, and that's what we like to do here on the Soul Fresh Podcast. We like to bring in the people that we feel can best explain these situations and some of these current events that we're dealing with. And so,
because like we say all the time to each other, we are not the experts.
Yeah.
We are here to facilitate.
Yeah. So we got an expert. and I will say she is an expert. And so, but before we get into those conversations, I'm going to do a quick, brief history, and I'm going to get her to correct me if I miss anything. So, of course, we had the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the VRA. And basically, in a nutshell, it authorizes state governments to oversee elections in southern states where voter suppression was highly visible and where they experienced it. And then, we had the literacy test, grandfather clause, and the most ridiculous thing of all, which is the poll tax.
The poll tax.
You would actually charge people to say, hey, it's going to cost you money to vote. And so we want to kind of connect 1965 to 2022 as far as, and also 2013. I think there was another bill because each year, several years, they tried to revise the voter rights bill.
Right, because you can take it all the way back to Reconstruction where it started in 1865, and then we can bring it all the way up to 1964 where the Civil Rights Act actually stopped the polling tax and the comprehension test. But we're going to get into all that. We tell it too much already.
And if we're going to talk about it, let's go back to the very beginning, the 15th Amendment.
The 15th Amendment, right.
Where it all started. What does that say? So this is what that says. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The Congress, keyword, Congress. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So as you were talking about in 1865, so sometime around 1870s, it worked for a little bit, and then they passed the Enforcement Acts.
Right.
So
Because that was Reconstruction was the 1865 to 1877 time
Right.
period, and then they went on to another so they could keep basically that systemic process that keeps rolling through.
yeah, and so they did the Enforcement Act. Then, of course, Supreme Court comes and says, "Nah, that's unconstitutional. Y'all can't do that.
Right.
We don't need y'all trying to enforce that." And they basically said, "Nah, dog, you don't have the right to do that." So so then, as we know now, in 1888 to around 1908, every Southern state began to pass what? Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
So then Jim Crow, of course, made it even harder and difficult for us to navigate in these spaces of trying to be just black, And as I like to call it in today's time, James Crow III, Esquire.
When did you come up with that? That's new.
That's who he is. He's still here. He ain't going nowhere.
James Crow
He is
III,
James Crow
Esquire.
the Third, Esquire. I came up with that a couple weeks ago, but I'm gonna get that patent.
You gonna get that trademark?
Yeah, trademark. But don't get it twisted. Jim Crow is now James. So
He's evolved.
yeah. So we've got a nice young lady to come on here and talk about and go further in depth on voter rights
and voter suppression.
All right, so I will tell you a little bit who we got. We've got Fenika Miller. So she is the Senior State Organizing Manager for Black Voters Matter. She also has launched a co-working space here in Warner Robins, which is Succeed Co-work. And also, if you remember, she ran for Georgia House of Representatives of District 147. So we'd like to go ahead and bring to the table Fenika Miller.
Give it up, Miss Fenika Miller.
Hey, thank y'all for having me.
Thank you for joining the podcast.
On the podcast.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming through. So how you been?
I have been well. Tried to get a little bit of rest after the municipal elections last year.
Yeah,
So,
and I know a lot of you people have probably seen her face on social media and then out in the streets on that bus. That bus is amazing.
Get on
Black
the bus.
Voters Matter, as you can see on the shirt. So tell us a little bit about that. First, before we go into that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yep, that blackest bus in America. That's what we call it. And the blackest fleet in America, y'all. We love those buses. I am a lifelong resident of Houston County. An organizer, an activist, an entrepreneur. I've been loving these streets, community engagement, voter education work since I was 13, probably a preteen. I worked on my first campaign back in the 1980s on Mr. Houston Porter's reelection campaign.
Oh, wow.
I remember that.
did not
I remember
know.
that.
I remember that too, but I did not know. Wow, you was out there young.
Yeah,
I was out there young because my cousin was out there. You know, she would give
Another
me
neighbor of mine.
Who, Charlene?
No, well, Mr. Porter back
Mr.
in the
Porter,
day.
yeah.
Mr. Porter, he was over the bus. What was it?
For the Board of Education,
Right.
the bus barn.
The bus barn. He was over that. Yeah.
Yeah, but he ran for county commission. He was elected twice, but Charlene worked on his reelection campaign in the late 80s. And she would have me and my cousins and brothers out, putting stuff in mailboxes and,
Oh, so it's in you.
It's in me.
That
right?
footwork from the
That's
beginning.
that footwork, right? One of my favorite scriptures is guard the deposit entrusted to you. And so that was poured into me, that service. I'll never forget her laying the phone list of the voter roll on the counter and saying, I know you skipped cartoons this morning and you was out putting flyers in the mail, but I need you to make these phone calls too, right? If we get Mr. Houston Porter reelected, that really helps to transform our communities.
Right.
So I made those calls. I bought into that. He was reelected, and I've been working ever since.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Coincidentally, he's the last black person to be elected countywide in Houston County.
Wow. And that was the late 80s.
Late 80s.
And I remember that. Like you say, we've known him forever because he was always been a deacon at our church. So we go way back with him, or he goes way back with us. So, all right, tell us a little bit about what it says on your shirt, Black Voters Matter.
Black Voters Matter.
What is that?
Black Voters Matter is a national civil voting rights organization.
Right.
Founded in 2016 by Cliff Albright and Latasha Brown. They are the co-founders of the organization. Two amazing, dynamic organizers that have been doing this work for several decades. But back in 2016, if you all remember the Senate race
Yes.
over in Alabama, Latasha and Cliff raised about $250,000 over the course of 2 weeks. And what they did is they gave those resources to organizers, individuals, and folks who were doing the work on the ground, right, in order to elect Doug Jones,
Right.
to defeat a
Which
racist.
I remember,
Right.
And I remember that
Yes.
year,
Yeah.
a lot of women came out.
Yes.
He had a lot of support for women. So
He had a lot of support from black women.
that's
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And so what they did, because if you all know anything about politics, campaigns typically run from volunteer folks on
Yes.
the ground, volunteers to make phone calls, volunteers to take people to the polls, volunteers to knock on doors. But what they did is they connected resources with those folks. Here's a gas card, so you can take folks, and you don't have to take this money out of your pocket in order to do that.
Right.
Here's a couple of dollars for you to pay your canvassers a stipend in order to do that work. These ladies were in a church basement making phone calls out of the phone book. Let's connect you with a phone list, a voter list.
Right.
And so that $250,000 investment put into the streets of Alabama sent Doug Jones to the Senate and catapulted Black Voters Matter into the national organization that it is today.
Hot diggity dog. There it is. Got to start from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
So I understand in 2018 you ran for Georgia House of Representative District 147.
Yes.
So close race.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday. Very close. And what I want to compare is, and this is just me, I see a lot of similarity to Stacey Abrams. You know, and that's a compliment.
It is.
It's a compliment only because
It's
she
the
was in that same,
mannerisms.
she was in that same situation where, you know, close race, almost got it, needed it, we wanted it, but then again she flipped it on us.
Yes.
And went out there on the ground and did the work.
Right.
And that's what you've been doing.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people don't understand, and you know, you had a lot to do with a lot of stuff. Like you like the Godfather behind the scenes.
Yeah,
You know?
that's what it is.
You know, you out here flipping counties, you out here putting in the work.
The
but-
puppet master.
Yeah, so let's
That's
talk.
what you call it.
Let's talk about that experience in 2018 as far as what that put in you. Did that put that fire in you to come out? And do you feel that this is where you need to be, or do you plan on running for office again? Like, where do you feel that your best place is to be? And what space would you rather navigate? Because you're doing your thing out here.
Yeah.
You know?
So I love the streets.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of background. So I